That's it. We're on live. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, those who are here in person, those on Zoom, those on Facebook Live, and those on Torah Anytime. Anybody who'd like to get some quality Torah material, not withstanding the comment we had in the conversation we had before Shmuley, but there's lots and lots of quality material on Torah Anytime, and go there. You can find TorahAnytime.com, find lots and lots of great stuff. It's interesting, you're saying about feeling young and not feeling young. I actually met the oldest person I have ever met this Sunday night at the Creek wedding. So at the Creek wedding, it seems that Jordan, who's Ian's new son-in-law, has a great-grandmother who is, get this, 106 years old. She came up from London for this wedding, dressed up, fully dressed up. She was unfortunately confined to a wheelchair. But we were having the greatest time. We were looking, she's at the table next to us, and she's getting the table. They were in stitches. She's getting them to laugh. It came to benching. She's singing away at the benching and thinking to myself, this is how it should be. This is how it should be.
She wasn't the one with the grandchildren.
She was the one with the great-grandchildren also. Oh, she wasn't. No, that was the young couple. They were younger than we were. They were the ones. That was somebody else. The people kicking me. Yeah, the people kicking me, that was a little bit annoying, but so be it. Okay, right. We have a few interesting ideas that I'd like to share with you tonight, and that all has to do with Lot. Tonight, we're mainly going to deal with a fellow called Lot. Lot, the nephew of Avram. So we read in the beginning of the Parasha, we read about Lot. So if you're in the Art Scroll Chumash, it's page 54. Verse 4, Vayelech Avram, Avram went, Kashadiba elav Hashem, as Hashem spoke to him, Vayelech ito Lot, and Lot went along with him. So there you have a verse that tells you that Lot is actually traveling along with Avinu, and Vayikach Avram, in verse 5 again it says, Avram took his Sarai, his wife Sarai, Lot ben Achiv, Lot his nephew, all the things that they had, what they got from Choron, and they went to Eretz Canaan. So that is how it goes. They make their way down to Egypt. They're in Egypt. They come back out of Egypt. And now things are not as good. Verse 5, chapter 13, page 58. Parak Yud Gimel, Pasuk Hey. Begam lelot ha'aleches Avram. Also Lot, who goes with Avram, Hayat son of Akwalim. He also had flock, and he had cattle, and he had different tents. The land could not manage to house them together. Because they had a lot of money. And they couldn't live together. It was too difficult to live next to each other. And now you have an argument. By Yerib, there's an argument between the shepherds of Avram and the shepherds of Lot, and the people of the Canaanite and the Perizzites lived at the time in the land. And Avram says to Lot, let there not be a fight between you and me, between my shepherds and your shepherds, because we are brothers. The whole land is in front of you. So just make your way. If you want to go left, I'll go right. If you want to go right, I'll go left. And Lot looks out and he sees the entire plain of the Jordan, which was well watered. And that was before God destroyed Sodom and Amorah and that whole area. And therefore Lot chooses that and he goes there. And then they moved into different places. So that's the story that we have between Avraham Avinu and Lot. And I would like to discuss 3 or 4 points about this tonight, things that I saw today that I really felt spoke to me. So the first thing is, we read as follows. V'gam lelot, also Lot, aholechas Avram, who went together with Avram, hoya, he had son uvaka ve'oholim. He had flock and cattle, and oholim are tents. Okay, many tents. Which is interesting because Avram Avinu, the entire time we read about Avram Avinu, we read Avram Avinu has a tent, not many tents, but a tent. It speaks always about, for example, the verse just before that, in verse 3, Vayelech lema'asav, he went back from Egypt in the same travels that he had been before, Minegav Beisel, from the south to Beisel, Adamokim, to the place where his tent, singular, was originally. Between Beisel and I. And we read again about Avraham Avinu in his Ohel, his singular, his Ohel, his tent. So why are we reading about Avraham Avinu in one singular tent when Lot has many tents? Considering specifically that Avraham Avinu he was the main guy. Remember years ago, there was a fellow that I met, and I thought he worked for somebody else. It turned out he was a business partner. But even when he was a business partner, he was only small fried fish next to the big guy. The big guy, even this guy, I remember when I met him, I was told by his nephew that this guy owned, and this goes back about 20 something years, he owned a $5 million watch collection 20 years ago or so. You can imagine what that watch collection would be worth today. It's a fortune. It's stupid money to spend on watches, $5 million. Okay, he was a collector, he collected it. But the guy who was really his boss, don't even ask, he's in the top 10 in Austria. Top 10 most richest people in Austria. So the next guy, even though he had a lot of money, was never as big as the guy on top. Avraham Avinu is the guy on top. Lot is second in command, third in command, whatever you want to call him. But often the second in command, the CEO's gotten the most money, right? The next guy down from Elon Musk at Tesla, it's not like slightly less money than Elon Musk. It's like way less money than even if he's a billionaire, right? But he's not all the way at the top. Same thing is true for Amazon or for any of the other big companies. Like, who's the next person down from Bill Gates? Who's the next person down from Mark Zuckerberg? Right? All these people are worth in the tens of millions, but the next people down from them are way, way lower down. So yet, Lot is described as having Oholim many tents, and Avraham Avinu is described as having only one tent. So where's the difference? So Rav Zalman Sorotskin, of who we might say two things tonight of his, says the following idea, which I thought was very beautiful. Avraham Avinu had many tents, but it's a question of focus, right? Meaning to say, I know people that own many different homes. They have one home here in Manchester. They own a flat in London whenever they go down over there. They have a flat or a house in Israel. They might have something in the Lake District. They might have something down in Cornwall. They might own something in America or New York when they go there. They'll have lots of property all over the place. And if you ask them, how many houses do you have? What will they say? Well, no, they might say they have lots of houses. How many homes do they have? One. Yeah? Because I own lots of houses. I have only one home. Okay? And it depends what your focus is. So Avraham Avinu might have had many tents. He was a very wealthy man, much wealthier than Lot was. But what was Avraham Avinu's focus? Avraham Avinu's focus was singular at bringing God's name to the rest of the people. That's what he was trying to do. Avraham Avinu created a hotel of sorts, and people came and he gave them free food and free drink. And when they said, what do we owe you? And he said, nothing. All I want from you is, now that you finished, praise God. God? Never heard of that. Who's God? So they started explaining to them, how did all this come to be? It only came to be because God created it. So therefore, I'm just God's messenger in giving you this food. You need to thank God for what you got. So they thank God. So that is what Avraham Avinu's focus was. And since Avraham Avinu's focus was that was the only place that was considered, as far as Avraham Avinu was concerned, important. Everywhere else, it's nice to have it in the background, right? But it's not really important. Do you understand what I'm saying? Sometimes you have one place. This is where I live. Like I said before, this is my home. This is where I live. Everywhere else, you know what? If I go to Israel and I'm going for 2 weeks and I have a flat somewhere in Jerusalem, this is my flat in Jerusalem. This is my holiday home. But if somebody says, where is your home? The person will probably not say, what do you mean I got 6 homes? No, my home is here, where I live. I happen to have a few more places where I have houses as well. But my home is one place. So Avraham Avinu says, my home, my tent, is that one tent that I use to spread the word of God. Do I have a lot more tents? Yeah, they're unimportant to me. I don't really care. They don't really rank so much. Lot was all about the money. So when it's all about the money, when you speak to something to whom everything's about the money, for them, yeah, it's all about the money. So the more they have, the more than gloat. So you say, how many homes do you have? I own houses in 6 continents. Oh, wow. Right? We're so jealous of you. Interesting. I was just listening. My son was listening to a podcast today, and they were interviewing a fellow who's a professor of economics at New York University. And the guy was talking such rubbish. I was like so upset. I was saying to my son, I said, man, why are we listening to this guy? This guy's talking, and he's like, yeah, I mean, this guy really is talking rubbish. So the guy basically said he grew up poor. Not so poor, but they were sort of like towards the bottom of the ladder. And so therefore he really believed he needed to make it. He wanted to make it. And he said, for the first 20 years of my sort of like adult life, from about 20 to 40 or from 25 to 45, I worked like a dog, day and night. And then he said the following, which so disturbed me. He says, I want you to know, it cost me my hair. Okay, then I'm not so bothered by it. Yeah, I know, same thing. It cost me my hair. That wasn't the bothersome bit. It cost me my marriage, my first wife. And it was worth it. That last bit when you say it was worth it, I'm like, it was worth it. If you lost your hair over making a lot of money, big deal. So you lost your hair, right? I've not had hair for a very long time. It doesn't bother me too much. It's, I've never found for the things that I wanted to do that not having hair has ever held me back, right? If I wanted to be a superstar, a model or something like that, I'd never make it anyway, right? That was never where I wanted to be. Fine, so I don't have hair. But as a rabbi, it's never been a problem. As a teacher, it's never been a problem. And even if kids sometimes make fun of it, so you laugh about it together with them and you move on from it. It's not a big deal. Yeah. But to say, I lost my family, I lost my first marriage over money, and it was worth it. That's the kind of person where you say to yourself, I don't want to hear anything else you have to say. If that's something you can say publicly on a podcast, listened to by millions of people, is one of the most popular podcasts in the world, this one. And you're willing to say that in front of millions of people, I got nothing left to hear from you. What else do you have to teach people? It's worth losing a relationship, losing your first wife and everything over what? Over money? But that's where Lot was at. For Lot was all about money. So Lot says, what does he have? He has Oholim. He's got many different tents because he's gloating about the money that he has. He's so proud of his money. Avraham says, I don't need to gloat about my money. My money's incidental, right? There's some people that make a lot of money, but they don't live for their money. Just because they have a lot of money doesn't mean that that's what they live for. There's some people who live for making money, like this individual we spoke about. When you live for making money, it's all about what you have. And so therefore, when somebody says, that's a nice car, that's nothing. You should see the other ones I have in my garage. Just take the compliment, right? Somebody complimented on your car. You have to tell me you own another Lamborghini and Bentley somewhere else. Like, who cares? Nobody, the honest truth is, very few people really care. So what are you gloating about it for? And secondly, it's not important in life. I know plenty of you read about, it's one thing, I'm gonna probably have a whole speech about this at one point. But some of you might have seen Prince Harry is now coming out with a book. And what's the book called? Anybody see it? Spare. What does that mean? He's the spare. That means you could be the son of the king and queen of England and be spare. You have everything, basically. Oh, the wealthiest, one of the wealthiest families, most influential families in the world. Bodyguards and fame and everything else. And you feel like you're spare. You could have a guy that's born into a poor family, but feels top of the world. Because my parents love me. I'm doing well in school. I got everything I need. I still have my parents actually for that. Because that's the picture, part of the thing that, I don't know how old he was when he lost his mom, Harry. He was quite young. And it was very sad. The whole story, the whole story is tragic. He's been through a tragic story. But on the other hand, when you read about this expose about his difficult life, I'm sure there are plenty of people living in, housing estates somewhere in all around the world, reading that book and going, are you serious? Are you really serious that you're complaining about this? Yeah, it is Nebuch. It is Nebuch. But you can be a millionaire and feel spare. You can be the Prince of England and feel spare. And you can be relative to that and nothing and a nobody and feel like the biggest person in the world. You can. But what's your focus? Your focus is money and fame. That's what you get. So you have the money and fame over here. So Lot says, I got many tents. Every time I ask you about what you have, I says, oh, you've not even seen anything. This is just one part of it. You speak to other people sometimes, they have only one place, but that's their focus, even if they have a lot of money. Avraham Avinu has one focus. Lot, all over the place, because money is his focus. Point number one. Point number two, also from Rav Zalman Sorotskin, again, two really, really beautiful ideas. That first idea I thought was very beautiful, and here comes the next idea which we read. So if you turn to page 60, it says the following. Vayisa Lot as Einav, and Lot raised up his eyes. Vaya is called Kikayad, and he saw the plains of the Jordan, Kichula Mashke, which was beautifully watered. Lifnei Sheches Hashem, before Hashem destroyed Sodom and Amorah, Kigan Hashem Geretz Mitzrayim. It was like the garden of Hashem, like the land of Egypt, going to Atzar, the most lush lands. So says Rav Zalman Sorotskin, Vayisa Lot as Einav. Lot was Mr. Superficiality. And how do we understand that? How do we know that? Because the Torah tells us Vayisa Lot is Einav. And this is a trait that Lot received from his father. So let's explain this. Many of you will know, even though we don't speak about it, the Torah doesn't mention it, will know the famous midrash that the Torah speaks about in last week's Sedra. Sure, many of you have heard of this. Avraham Avinu, did we speak about this last week? I think we might have spoken about this last week. Avraham Avinu, his father has a shop full of idols. Yeah, remember? And what happens? Avraham Avinu goes and he smashes up all the idols, and his father comes home and says, what happened? He tells him it was the biggest idol. He stuck the hammer in this, and that father says, can't be. And then Avraham Avinu says, so why do you believe in these stupid idols? Avraham Avinu schleps him to Nimrod. Now, here at this point, this is part two of the story that we did. We told half the story last week. Here comes part two of the story. So Avraham Avinu says to Nimrod, I'm not afraid of you. And Nimrod says, well, I'm going to throw you in the fire. He goes, I'm not afraid of you. Because my God is the God of fire. Can you fight against this? And my God, the God of everything, says Avraham Avinu. Fire means nothing to him. He says, all right. So he says, fine, let's try my God against your God. Okay. So what they do is they put his God against the other God, and they take Avraham Avinu and they throw him into the fire. And God sends down one of the angels and he cools off the fire. And Avraham Avinu is strolling around in the fire as if nothing happened. As if nothing happened, no problem, no issues. And then they turn to Avraham Avinu's brother, Haran, who is Lot's father. Right? This part we didn't speak about last week. And they say to Haran, Haran, what about you? Whose side are you on? What does Haran say? So Haran, when they threw Avraham Avinu into the furnace, said to himself, listen, if this Abraham guy is really for real and he comes out unscathed, I guess he's right. There must be a God, because how's he getting out of the fire like that? So there must be a God. If they ask me if there's a God, I'll be on Avraham Avinu's side. If my brother Avraham Avinu goes up in smoke and in ashes, well, I'm not being dumb enough to say that again. So I'm on Nimrod's side. So he's watching. He's going, pretty impressive. That's pretty cool. Avraham Avinu goes into the furnace, comes out, nothing happens. Hey, Haran. Yeah. What's your opinion? I'm with him, not with you. It's all right. You go into the fire. They throw Haran into fire. Boom, he burns up. Yeah. Yeah, it's not funny that. Pardon? I'm sorry. Thank you. Right? Yeah. But that's what happens. Haran. Now it's a lot of discussion why Haran got burnt and Avraham Avinu got saved. But the basic point always is Avraham Avinu went in to be burnt at the stake. He was willing to give up his life. And so therefore God saved him. Haran went in to be saved. So God said, you're not going in to be saved. You're not really, Haran didn't really mean to risk his life for God. Because he thought, if a miracle happened to Avraham Avinu, a miracle happened to me also. I'm not risking my life. God's going to save me. God says, you're not willing to risk your life for me. Why should I save you? You're not really in there. Avraham Avinu says, if I get burned for the honor of God, so be it. I'm willing to give my life to defend the honor of God. Haran, he's not giving up his life to defend the honor of God. So what does Haran follow? His eyes. I'm looking at it and I'm seeing what's happening. What's going on over here? Haran looks at it and he says, Avram, Surprise, surprise, he survived. Well, I guess Avraham Avinu's got a better trick than the other ones do. I'm on his side. What do you mean you're on his side? That's how you decide whether there's a God or not? By watching somebody else getting thrown into a furnace and seeing what the outcome of that is? What that means is, and what that shows us is that Haran had a total superficiality as to how things worked. All he knew was, let me look at it and let me see what it looks like. If it looks good and it smells good, it is good, and we'll go with it. If it looks wrong, we won't go with it. In this instance, looks wrong. Looks okay, sorry. So Haran says, fine, I'm with it. He gets burned up because he didn't really mean to risk his life for God's honor. So now we look at Lot. And Lot looks out at the plains of the Jordan. And what does Lot see? Look at this lush land. Look how beautiful this is. Look how wonderful this is for vegetation. If I want to take my flock somewhere for good grass, look at the grass over here. Look how it grows. You know that story? There's a famous story that there's a fellow begging outside the bank in Brooklyn, and there's this Alt Baba that's standing there, and he says, lady, I've not eaten in 2 days. He goes, you have to force yourself. No, I got nothing to eat. I got nothing to eat. I've been eating grass. She says, grass? Yeah. For 2 days? Yeah. Wow. Can't believe it. Come to my house. He's like, really? That's so kind of you. Can I bring my family? Yeah, bring them all. He says, really? That's amazing. She goes, yes, we got grasses like this high. Yeah. But all he sees is grass. He goes, grass, look at the grass. Look how wonderful this grass is. What a great bit of... Not heard that before either. Yes? Yeah. So grass, he's like, you got so much grass everywhere. Look what I can give to my sheep. And we say to him, wait a second. But who lives there? Who do you see? Sodom and Amorah. She'll say, yes, I know Sodom and Amorah they're not exactly the nicest people. But look at the grass. Yeah. And then you say to yourself, you've lost the plot there. That's totally losing focus. By Yisa Lot as Einav, Lot raises up his eyes, and what he sees is Kika Hayad in the plains of the Jordan, Kikula Mashka. All he sees is wonderful pasture. He can't look past that, right? And that's the problem. If you can't look past that superficiality, you end up in Sodom, which is what we read later. Lot ends up in Sodom at one point or another. Why? Because he couldn't look past the nice fields. He couldn't see beyond the nice fields. Wait a second. Who lingers there? Who lies in the background of those beautiful fields? Sodom and Amorah. I don't want to be anywhere near Sodom and Amorah. What do I want to have to do with Sodom and Amorah? But Lot makes that mistake. He only sees what his eyes show him. He doesn't think beyond that. And so he makes the mistake and moves into the wrong place. And now we move into the next bit. So some say that's how Rav Sorotsky learns it. Others learn it differently. Rashi, for example, tells us that Lot, Rashi is on the bottom over here. Lot says that he wanted to go to this area. Why? Because he wanted to be together with the people of Mitzrayim. With the people of Sodom. He liked their wicked ways. He liked the debauchery. He liked the fact that they were hedonistic, etc., etc. He liked all of that. And so therefore Lot says to himself, that's where I want to go. That's where I want to be. And many of the Mefarshim ask the question. They say, let's read what the Torah says. Because if you read what the Torah says, that's not what the Torah says. Let's read the verse again. Vayisa Lot es Einav. Lot raised up his eyes. Vayas kol kika hayad, and he sees the plains of the Jordans, kikula mashke. They are entirely full of well-watered land. Because this was before God destroyed Sodom and Amorah. It was like the gardens of God, like the land of Egypt, all the way to Tzoar. So what is the Torah telling us? Why did Lot choose this land? Why? Good lands with grass. Yeah, that's what the Torah says. The land was very fertile. Say, Chachamim, Lot wanted to sit with the people of Sodom because he wanted to do sins. Where'd you get that from? How'd you pull that out of a hat? Why are you saying that? Why don't we assume, basically, like the Torah tells us? The Torah tells us the reason or the problem over here was that Lot was looking for good pasture land, and this was good land for pasture. That's what the Torah says if you were to read the Torah just as the verse reads it. So Chazal have to have a reason why they say that. So Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky says a beautiful and a very important idea. And this is true for all of us. Many of us are being led by their subconscious mind. And even though consciously they say A, subconsciously the real reason they're doing something is totally different. That's all of us. And so he brings the following verse, a very interesting sort of comment that he makes and comparison he makes. It very sensible, actually. So if you go to Parashas, you don't have to go there. I'll just read to you from over there. We read in Parashas Behalosa that there was a complaint to Moshe Rabbeinu. V'hasafsuf, v'hasafsuf, without the a. V'hasafsuf asher b'kirba, the riffraff amongst them, the rabble amongst them is avu tava. They had a cultivated a craven. Vayashuva Yivkov Gaman Yisrael, and the Jewish people cried as well. V'yorma, and they said, Miyachadeinu Masa will serve us meat. This is in Parashas Behalosa, Perek Yud Aleph, Pasuk Daled, and chapter 11, verse 4 in Bamidbar. Vayivku, right? They cried, and Bnei Yisrael also cried and said, who's going to feed us bread? Now here you go. Zocharnu es hadaga, we remember the fish ashanocham in Mitzrayim chinam that we ate free in Egypt. Esa kishuim, the gourds, vesavatichim, and the melons, vesachotzer, vesabetzalim, and the leeks, and the onion, and the garlic, and now all we're left with is mon. Imagine that. I don't know. I mean, many of us have known survivors. I've never heard any survivor from World War II wax poetic about the soup, the coffee, or the bread in the concentration camps or in the labor camps. Wasn't much of a difference. Nobody ever said, oh, do you know what I really miss? Those horrible coffees in Auschwitz. Those were the good old days. Nobody would say something. That's just the most ridiculous thing to say. So the Torah tells us, the Mefarshim tell us that really when they say we miss Egypt, what they said is we miss the fact that in Egypt we were not morally being held to a certain standard. We could do whatever we wanted to. We could marry whoever we wanted to. We could sleep with whoever we wanted to do. We weren't being held, and nowadays we don't have that anymore. But Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky says again, where do Chachamim come up with that from? The Torah doesn't say that. You read the Torah says, we remember the fish and we remember the onions and the melons and the leek and the garlic. That's what the Torah says. They don't say anything about marrying people they weren't allowed to marry now. So where's the Torah pulling this out of a hat from? You can't just say whatever you want to. So Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky says, if you were to think about it, come back to the question I asked you before. The Jews really missed the leek and the onion and the garlic in Egypt. That's what you remember from Egypt? That's so twisted. Egypt was hell. It was like a concentration. It was like a labor camp all over again. It was the first labor camp the Jews went to. Unfortunately, many labor camps after that, but that was the first forced labor camp that the Jews ever were in, was in Egypt, in Mitzrayim, where they were first forced to work at terrible conditions and being beaten and being killed and not being given anything to eat, and. That was the original labor camp before the Nazis came and stole the idea from them. The Nazis weren't the first ones to have labor camps. Siberian gulags existed before the Nazis, and well before then they had labor that they made the Jews do in the ghettos and other things. And way before that, all the way at the beginning of the Jewish civilization, you start off with what? The big labor camp in Egypt. So they remember that fondly. Remember the food that they had there? How could anybody wax poetical and say, I remember the good old days when we lived in Auschwitz. Oh, that was good. That's what they're saying. The good old days in Egypt when we had the onion and the leek and the garlic. And therefore, the Torah says, that's not what it means. That cannot be what it means. Because nobody's going to wax poetical about onion and leek and garlic in Egypt, in a concentration camp. So what are they really saying? We missed something else. We missed the certain freedom that we had in Egypt. Yes, we might have been physically enslaved, but morally, we had absolutely no restrictions. And now, stuck with all the restrictions. It's not easy. It's not fun. And that's what they're complaining about. And therefore, says Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, the same thing is true over here. You're looking out at the plains of the Jordan River. Now, think about it. At the moment you are living with Avraham Avinu, one of the most influential people of the time. This man took you along when you were an orphan. He helped you. He gave you a shelter when he didn't have any money. Avraham Avinu wasn't wealthy all the time. In the beginning, Avraham Avinu was very poor. Only later, when the king of Egypt gave him money to become wealthy. So Avraham Avinu started off as a pauper. And he's schlepping along this nephew whom he doesn't need to have with him. He could have said, stay behind with the rest of the family. I don't need you. And he's schlepping him along, and he's got him, taking him here, and he's taking him there, and he's giving him stuff. And his nephew became extremely wealthy by living by Avraham Avinu. Now, Avraham Avinu says to him, listen, I'm just not happy with the way things are working out between my shepherds and your shepherds. So let's make a deal. I'll go one way, you'll go the other way. If you were in that situation, if you were Lot, what should you say to the man? I'm going to leave you. I owe you my life. I owe everything I am. I owe everything I have. You're one of the most famous people. You're the person that's going around the world and teaching the world morality. You're the man. You're the person to cling to. You think I'm going to run away, go somewhere else, and, walk away from this ticket, this golden ticket that I'm holding at the moment? And for what? Some better grass? Some grass has been watered slightly better than the grass we're with now. So Lot says, I could stay with Avraham Avinu. Or, look over there, look how lush that grass is. You telling me that Lot left Avraham Avinu, all the success that he had over there, the tremendous covet, honor of living in Avraham Avinu's vicinity for a bit of grass? So therefore, says Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, that's where Chazal coming from. Chazal is saying that doesn't make sense. Lot didn't leave Avraham Avinu for some grass, because we don't leave people for grass. Not someone as important as Avraham. So what did he leave for? There's something he didn't like what Avraham Avinu stood for. That's the point. He wasn't happy with what Avraham Avinu stood for. Avraham Avinu stood for. Just 1 second. Avraham Avinu stood for something, and Lot wasn't happy with that. Avraham Avinu stands for morality, and Lot says, I don't want that. I don't want to live a life like that. I don't want to live this restricted life where certain people I can marry and certain people I can't marry, and from these people I'm allowed to take and these people I'm not. You know what? I don't need it. I don't want it. So even though the Torah tells me Kikula Mashke, yes, he's looking out at the plains of Mamre and all he looks out at the plains of the Jordan and he sees wonderful grass and he moves away because it's such beautiful grass. Chazal tell us that's not what's lying behind it. That might be your excuse. That might be what you say to save face. But deep down, that's not the reason. And lastly, we have over here a very beautiful thing that Rav Schwab says. Rav Schwab says that there seems to be a bit of a difference over here in which direction Lot traveled. First, it tells us the following. Verse 9. The whole land is in front of you. He pardoned, please go away from me, separate from me. If you go left, I will go right, and if you go right, I will go left. So the Targum Onkelos, who translates in Aramaic, says the following. If you go to the north, I will go to the south. And if I go to the south, Ano letzipura, if you go to the south, ano letzipura, I will go to the north. So it is a question over here, a discussion over here between north and south. And they're saying if you go north, I'll go south. If you go south, I go north. Right? However, then it says the following. This is verse 11. Lot chose for himself in the plains of the Jordan. Vayisa Lot Mikedem. And Lot journeyed from the east, which seems to be implying which direction did Lot journey? If he's going from the east, say west, correct? And then they said goodbye to each other. So Rav Shwam asked the question, which direction did Lot travel in? West or north and south? Targum tells us if you're going north, I go south. If you're going south, I go north. Yet Lot travels west. Go west. Yeah. Okay, let's not sing it, but go west. So which direction did he go? So what Rav Schwab says, and this is, even this is important. Even this is some kind of level. Would you, not you, he asks yourself the question, even a person that is not so religious, would they transgress Shabbos knowingly in front of somebody like the rabbi? So let's take a guy who drives his car on Shabbos. Would he walk with his rabbi to his car and go, Rabbi, see you later, I'm getting my car now, eat, and go inside? So somebody told me in South Africa, that's what they do. In South Africa, they're literally, it's a very, very different kind of community. And it's quite normal, like for a guy to drive down the street on Shabbos, to pull down the window, hoot his rabbi and say, hey, rabbi, and move on. Yeah. And Shmuli's nodding his head. Is that quite normal in South Africa? Yeah. No, but it means it's a certain kind of relationship that they have with their rabbi. Whereas here in England, they're not like that. Most people are not like that. They wouldn't necessarily hoot and say hello to me on Berry New Road. Very rare that would happen. Most people, they might drive past me and they'll look away or whatever, or they won't be comfortable or whatever else it is. Yeah, like this, right? But they're not like that. Ah, Rabbi, look, my new car. Shabbos, my new car. I'm off to Manchester United. See you. Yeah. I'm a flaming red. So they wouldn't say that. They might do it anyway, but they're not going to say it. I remember many years ago, I had an individual that came and knocked on my door. I won't even mention his name. He knocked on my door and he said, Rabbi, you need to come now because there's somebody down the road, a bit further down the road, who's dying, and the family have asked if you could come now. I said, all right, I'll come with you. So I'm walking with them. It's about a good 15, 20-minute walk. The person lived like near St. Mary's Park from my house. So that's just got to walk to St. Mary's. And it was like down, you got to turn left down St. Anne's Road. It was like down that way. So I said to the guy on the way, how did you know about this? But again, I was new in the rabbin and I shouldn't have asked that question. It was a dumb question. It's a stupid question. How did you find out? And the guy just says, let's just say I found out. And that was a really nice way to say it. Like, you don't want to say to me, he says, Rabbi picked up the phone on Shabbos. Let's just say I found out. But some people, they're not embarrassed. They're like, what do you mean? They called me. He's dying. They called me. I had to take the call. I take all the calls that come on Shabbos. Why wouldn't I take the phone? He didn't want to say that. He was embarrassed. Some people are not embarrassed to say, Rabbi, I'm not Orthodox. When I get phone, I'll pick up the phone. In front of you, I'd pick up the phone. Come on. Don't do it in front of me. Not because of me, but at one point or another, it gets embarrassing to do it in front of somebody who it's wrong. Sometimes you do it, nobody's around amongst your friends, and they're not as religious either, so they'll do their own thing. But I know sometimes even in our show, when people come with phones, when I come into the room, everyone sticks the phone in. Everyone hides it. Oh, the rabbi's here. Quickly put your phone away. Yeah, because they're not going to, unless it's somebody who doesn't really know the difference. They'll be like, pardon? I don't know if it's respect for me or respect for what I, for what I represent. I would hope it's for what I represent more than me, right? But they say, what he represents religion, and I know in shul it's wrong for me to have brought a mobile phone on Shabbos, so they put it away when I show up. Yeah, but that's already a level. For somebody, if I walk to it's not there yet. But unfortunately, I think one day it's going to come. You'll walk into shul and be somebody with a mobile phone. He said, put the mobile phone away, and go, why? And you'll be like, what do you mean? It's a shul. He goes, but I'm not religious. Don't tell me what to do. Yeah. You can't imagine that's going to happen? Pardon? I'm sure that's going to happen one day. Pardon? Directly outside the shul. So shul used to put outside cones, and now they were told by the council they weren't allowed to put the cones outside because you're not allowed to block off public parking. Somebody wants to park somewhere, you can't decide you're not allowing them to park there somewhere. So, if we have certain bar mitzvahs that we have, literally, or there are kids that come literally outside the shul gates and they call up their parents and say, all right, I'm done at this bar mitzvah, come and pick me up. And the parents drive up in front of the shul and the door opens up and the kids go inside and they drive off. Yeah. Which didn't used to happen. These people used to, yeah. But there was this fear that, I don't know if it's a fear, it's a certain respect. It's wrong to just park outside the shul. That's just not respectful. At home, I'll do what I want to, but not. And here we see the same thing, says Rav Schwab very beautifully. Says, in the end of the day, Lot did not want to look Avraham Avinu in the face and say, you know what? I'm moving to Sodom. Because Avraham will be like, you're moving where? Sodom. Don't you know who the people in Sodom are? You're moving into that hell, that living hell, that place where they torture people for all sorts of terrible things. That's where you're moving. You got no shame. You got no scruples, morals, values whatsoever. What was Lot going to say to that? Not much you can say to that, is it? So therefore, Lot didn't want to say that. So therefore, it says Lot started off moving off in a different direction, and then slowly made his way to Sodom. And that's where the verse says. Look at verse 12. Avram Yoshev Etz Canaan. Avram sat in Etz Canaan. The Lot and Lot Yoshev Barakir sat in the cities of the plains, and then Vayel at Sodom. Slowly, his tents moved over and over until he made his way to Sodom. But that was a slow move. He sort of surrounded Avram Avinu, went behind Avram Avinu's back, and made his way to Sodom, but very slowly. He didn't want to tell Avram Avinu, and even that's something. Even if people say, you know what, if somebody doesn't have Avera at home, but he wouldn't do Avera in front of this rabbi. So what does that mean? He says, at least that means he's got a little bit of respect. Not for me, but for what religion is. So there's a little bit of respect, because the reason people don't do it in front of the rabbi is not because they have respect for the rabbi. It's often because the rabbi symbolizes something. Okay, in front of the rabbi, I think it's a little bit too bad. That's wrong. Shouldn't be doing it in front of the rabbi. Yeah, that's what Lot felt. At least Lot had a small amount of embarrassment left, that even though he was moving down to Sodom, he didn't say, I'm moving now to the lowest city in the country, to the moral low ground of this country. That's where I want to move to. Nobody wants to say that out loud. Nobody's proud of that. You might sort of like slowly make your way, moving into the red light district. You're moving to the red light district. Well, why would you say that? No. I'm moving the neighborhood near the red light district. Then at night, slowly but surely, you make your way into it. Okay. But even that's something. Even just being a little bit embarrassed in front of somebody else to not say straight out, I am doing this and I want to do Averis and I don't care. That's terrible. Lot at least had that little bit left. And I think this is even an important thing. Even if somebody is not that religious, at least to keep that semblance. I won't do Averis in public. I don't have to do in front of everybody else, just eat not kosher or drive on Shabbos, whatever else it is. My rabbi's around, I'll look away. I won't eat certain things. I won't do certain things. I won't say certain things. And people say, like, look, Rabbi, I can't say this to you. You're a rabbi. Yep. They know it's wrong. It's not right to say these kind of things. It's not right to make these kind of comments. So that's still worth something. So that's the ideas I wanted to share with you tonight. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you to those who joined on Facebook Live, on Zoom, in person, and at anytime. Anyone wants to get in touch, davideisenberg@gmail.com. Look forward to Mitzvah Hashem to seeing you guys next week. In the meantime, have a great week.